Hello, this is Rudy Giuliani, and this, of course, is quite a day, isn't it? This is the Rudy Giuliani Show on Lindell TV. This is quite a day. History was made today. History was made with the election of a pope, the 267th pontiff of the Roman Catholic Church, the first one being Peter, the Apostle Peter, Simon Peter. And he was an American. He is an American, born in Chicago, educated at Villanova, but spending most of his life as a missionary, as an Augustan priest, a member of the Augustan order, which is one of the older orders in the Catholic Church. And also for quite a bit of time in Peru, where he became a dual citizen. So we have an American, born an American, of Spanish, Italian, and French parents. Mother Spanish, father Italian, and French. And from the south side of Chicago, which, as a number of baseball experts now claim him as a White Sox fan. South side White Sox, north side Cubs. There are exceptions. And he may not be a baseball fan. One never knows. I know Cardinal Dolan is a big baseball fan, and he grew up rooting for the St. Louis Cardinals. But you find him a lot now at Yankee Stadium, or at least I found him a lot at Yankee Stadium. And, of course, he won't tell me who he voted for, but I have to imagine he voted for a fellow American, don't you think? He elected the name Pope Leo. Gosh almighty, Pope Leo XIV. So the name of a pope, the name he selects, he is supposed to be significant as a signal of what he's trying to tell us about what he's dedicating his papacy to. So we'll go into that very shortly. But let's go back and look at the most critical and dramatic moment. It's when the French cardinal, who is was designated to make this announcement, came out and announced Habemus Papam, which is Latin, very simple words. We have a pope. And then in Italian, I believe, because I understood a good deal of it, I heard the name Roberto. I did not expect this particular cardinal. He was on none of the lists, although we found his name on a list given to me by Monsignor Alan Placker. And we're trying to reach him to find out just exactly how he knew that a week ago. But in any event, the cardinal then gave his given name, and then the name that he selected as pope. So let's listen to him and watch this very, very dramatic announcement with the smoke first. Well, there you see the white smoke. I do not know the name of the bird, but he's become famous. And now, let's look at the announcement.
Cut to.
1 hour later, then, this happened. That is, of course, St. Peter's Basilica. Under the main altar are the remains of the first pontiff, St. Peter. And there is Pope Leo, the new Pope Leo. First signal, unlike Pope Francis, he's wearing traditional Roman vestments, or the vestments for the Bishop of Rome. And now let's listen to his statement. Ted.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we're not going to listen to his statement.
Yeah. We're going to get it. Can you get on there? Just give me a statement.
Well, let's not. I mean, we have to move on, and hopefully, he is the 266th successor to Peter, by the way, and his given name is Robert Francis Prevost. As I said, his father was French Italian. So when they announced that he was Peruvian, I was kind of surprised with the name Robert Prevost. It doesn't sound like a Peruvian name, right? Or it doesn't sound like an Italian name either. Well, I imagine his father's given name was French, and his father was half Italian and half French, and his mother was Spanish. And he chose Peru as the focus of his missionary activity as an Augustinian priest. He was born in Chicago. He grew up in Chicago. He was educated in Chicago, and he went to Villanova University. He went to a high school in Chicago that is run by the Augustinian order of priests and brothers. And then he went to Villanova University, which you should know is also under the jurisdiction of the Augustinian fathers and brothers, the very, very ancient order of the church. Maybe I should explain for those of you who either don't remember, who are Catholics, or those of you who are not, there are, in this circumstance, there are really differentiation between basically two kinds of priests. We call the ones who don't belong to an order diocesan priests. They're priests who go to the seminary, they're ordained, and they are ordained under the auspices of a particular bishop. Could be the Archbishop of Chicago, the Archbishop of New York, the Bishop of Naples, Milan, and they are under his jurisdiction, the bishop.
He's got it right.
Every bishop has the power to consecrate a priest, to ordain a priest. Some, however, become members of orders. Orders are large groups of men and women who devote themselves to Jesus and devote their lives to Jesus. In addition to the usual vows that a priest takes, the vow of celibacy, for example, that you can't be married or engage in sexual activity. A member of an order takes an additional two vows. A vow of poverty and a vow of obedience. Well, I mean, obedience sort of works anyway, but the vow of poverty means that he can have no income. Diocesan priests are paid a salary. It's a modest salary, but they're paid a salary. They can occasionally switch from bishop to bishop. They can be brought to Rome, be paid a different salary. They can teach, be paid a salary for teaching. They can publish, they can be paid for their books. They can be lawyers or doctors and obtain fees that way. They don't take a vow of poverty. They generally don't make a lot of money, but if they invested in the stock market and got lucky, they could make a lot of money. If you belong to an order, you cannot. Now, an order means usually priests, nuns, and brothers. And not everyone in an order is a priest. In fact, in a lot of the teaching orders, they're brothers, and they devote themselves just to teaching, as do the nuns. So the orders of the church would be the Benedictines, probably the oldest because they were monks, the Augustinians, then later the Franciscans, founded by Francis of Assisi, or the Dominicans, founded by St. Dominic, or then the Jesuits, founded by St. Ignatius Loyola, who had been a Spanish soldier who converted after being wounded on the battlefield and decided to make his order the soldiers of Christ. The prior pope was a Jesuit. Or then there are orders that just teach, orders of nuns who just teach, Sisters of the Sacred Heart, or the brothers who taught me, the Christian brothers, who run many of the schools where you see the name La Salle, because they were founded by St. John the Baptist de La Salle, Most orders are founded by a particular saint, and they follow his particular dedication. So this is a very, very spiritual man, like the prior pope, who was a Jesuit. He also belongs to an order which requires additional education, additional vows. I believe he was in charge of the order of Augustinian priests for the whole world before he became the bishop of in Peru, and then only became a cardinal in 2023. He was brought to Rome by Pope Francis to take over the dicastery. I hope I pronounced that right. Now, what is a dicastery? The dicastery is the organization that selects bishops. They make the recommendations of bishops to the Pope. Now, this is a full-time job. I mean, if there are 250 so cardinals, you can imagine how many bishops there are, thousands, right? And they're being appointed all the time because, unfortunately, they're dying all the time, they're retiring all the time, and every diocese has to have a bishop. And then there are bishops who do a specialized work in the church. The selection of bishops, of course, usually lays out the people who eventually become cardinals. For some reason, Pope Francis wanted him particularly to do this. Probably knew him because they both served in South America. He served in South America since 1985, and put him in charge of that group. And at the specific request of Pope Francis, he added to the selection committee three women who could make recommendations on bishops for the first time in the history of the church. And for this, he's largely described as a liberal. I don't know I think these descriptions, liberal and conservative, work in politics. I think in the church, you're not going to find that kind of. God doesn't have one. God's not liberal or conservative. Last time I checked, and these men, particularly these cardinals, whether you agree with them or not, believe that they're trying to interpret the will of God or acting for the Holy Spirit. So it might lead them in one decision that you would consider liberal and one would consider conservative. They would consider it the right decision. For example, I do believe he opposed women being deacons, which would mean opposing women being priests. Deacons is the order orders you would take right before becoming an actual priest. The deacon assists the priest at a high mass or at a mass. It's the last of the 7 orders, the 7th one being a priest. And there was a big movement in the church to make women deacons because they are already communicant. Well, I don't know what the exact word is, but they can give out communion in the Catholic Church. Excuse my ignorance. I actually thought that women were allowed to be deacons in the Catholic Church. I thought that Francis had decided that. But I was... I haven't been corrected. I just read today that he opposed that. Well, maybe he lost. I don't know. I'm going to have to check. Although I have to say, I have not seen in any of the churches I've been in the last 2 years, a woman acting as a deacon. I have seen women acting as what would traditionally be altar boys or people giving out communion to help the priest, taking on many more roles than before. The popular wisdom is largely because in his comments, he mentioned Pope Francis, I'd say 3 times, as best as I could tell. He spoke mostly in Italian, which he speaks pretty close to a native. Of course, he worked in the Vatican for many years, back and forth. He was also educated in Rome for a while. Probably his best language is Spanish, believe it or not. That sounded even more natural than Italian. Would you agree, Stephen? Stephen speaks Spanish really well.
Completely agree.
Yeah, and I understand Italian. I speak it, but I'm embarrassed to speak it because I don't speak it well. But I thought his Italian was good. But you could tell it was an American speaking. You could tell it was a guy from Chicago or New York speaking Italian. And then he spoke in Latin, which to the conservatives was a big signal, because a lot of the so-called, I will not call them progressives. They are not progressives. Wanting to do away with the Latin Mass is not progressive. It's ignorant and stupid. Sorry. Non-intellectual, non-historical, and absurd. It's a beautiful work of art that should be preserved for no other reason than it's beautiful. And every composer would compare themselves based on the masses they composed, whether it was Beethoven or Mozart or a Lutheran like Bach, or you go back to Palestrina, one of the earliest composers, or Monteverdi, or Verdi, or the Mozart Requiem, which maybe is one of the greatest pieces of music ever written. It's a Requiem Mass, the Mozart Requiem. It's the Mass that was said and sung for John Kennedy when he died, and his funeral was held at St. Matthew's Cathedral, presided over by Francis Cardinal Cushing from Boston. So we don't know what his position is on that. He's described as a social liberal and ecclesiastical conservative, wanting to conserve the tradition of the church, but on social issues, a liberal. Now, I think we do have some of his comment, but may I ask before we play it, if it's not translated, just show a little of it so people can see him, because they're not going to really understand what he's saying.
La pace sia con tutti voi.
Well, that's Italian.
Fratelli, sorelle carissimi. Questo
My
è
dear
il primo
ones.
saluto del Cristo risorto, il buon pastore che ha dato la vita per il gregge di Dio. Anch'io vorrei che questo saluto di pace.
Well, let's move on to the part where he gives his blessing in Latin. Well, that's quite beautiful, where he gives his first papal blessing. Now, that was Italian, and I will now amend that you have to be like really picky to say that isn't quite beautiful.
Proviene da Dio.
It comes from God.
Dio che ci ama tutti.
God who loves all of us
incondizionalmente.
without any limits and conditions.
Ancora conserviamo nei nostri orecchi
And
quella voce debole ma sempre
we still have
coraggiosa
the sound
di
in our
Papa
ears of that,
Francesco,
the weak voice of
che
Pope
benediva
Francis,
Roma.
who was blessing Rome here. We have that fresh in our minds and our hearts.
Il Papa che benediva Roma dava la sua benedizione al mondo intero, quella mattina del giorno di
On that
Pasqua.
morning, on that day of Easter Sunday.
Consentitemi.
We can move on. Why don't we get ready for the end of the broadcast? The papal blessing, which is at the very end of his comments. They bring out a large, beautiful red book, probably a missal, and he turns to the side and reads from it, and he switches. Then, I believe he was speaking Spanish right before it, and he speaks and he reads Latin, and when you listen to it, hopefully that blessing will also be given to you. A papal blessing is considered a very special. By Catholics, it's considered a very, very special blessing. And it can be given by the Pope, or the Pope can authorize cardinals or bishops to give it in his name. And it's something that gives you a great deal of grace. And I would imagine on the first day that he's Pope, it's extremely, extremely significant to believing Catholics. And I'm sure to him, this was a very special moment when he got the chance to give a blessing as the Pope, probably as a cardinal and an archbishop and a bishop. He gave one on behalf of the Pope, but he's never given one as Pope. And then we'll talk about the significance of his name, because it's going to tell us a lot about him. Are we going to play it now, or is it, we'll save it for the end? We're going to play it now. That's good.
Sancti Apostoli Petrus et Paulus, de quorum potestate et auctoritate confidimus, ipsi intercedant pro nobis ad Dominum. Amen. Precibus et meritis Beate Mariae semper Virginis, Beati Michaelis Arcangeli, Beati Ioannis Baptiste,
Mary,
et
blessed
Sanctorum
Michael,
Apostolorum Petri et Pauli et Omnium
blessed Peter and
Sanctorum,
Paul,
misereatur vestri omnipotens Deus, et dimissis omnibus peccatis vestris, perducat vos Iesus Christus ad vitam aeternam. Indulgentiam, absolutionem, et
He is
remissionem
now
omnium peccatorum
forgiving you for your
vestrorum,
sins.
spatium vere et fructuose penitentiae, cor semper
those who are penitent.
penitens, et emendationem vitae, gratiam et consolationem Sancti Spiritus.
I mean, this
et finalem
emphasizes Jesus'
perseverantiam in bonis
mission
operibus tribuat
to the sinner.
vobis omnipotens et misericors Dominus. Amen. Et benedictio Dei omnipotent,
The blessing of God,
Patris, et
the Father,
Filii,
the Son,
et Spiritus
and the Holy
Sancti,
Spirit
descendat super vos, et maniat
descend upon all of you
semper.
forever. Now you make the name of the cross, and I don't know if it works through television, but if it does, you just got a papal blessing. His first one from previously Robert Prevost, who will never again be known by that name. Throughout the rest of history, whatever he does as a pope, which could be quite significant in the world that we live in, and it could be for a very long time. The man is 69 years old and looks to be in perfect health. One never knows, but from when you look at some of the cardinals, they were having a bit of a hard time walking. They were having a bit of a hard time expressing themselves. This man looks like he's 50 years old and acts like he's 50 years old. So with the will of God, this could be a pope 69, 79, 85, 89. Not impossible. Not in these days. And not with the Constitution that some of these people have. This guy has a heck of a background, Spanish, French, and Italian. I mean, and a lot of time in Peru. Probably a pretty tough guy. And from the north side of Chicago, the Italian section of Chicago. I think Al Capone lived there for a while. No, that's the Italian section.
Wow.
Of-
Wait, that's where we know where is what area?
Well, he lived in the north side. The people that were commenting, I'm not sure of this.
Oh, okay.
The people that were commenting, I say he lived on the north side of Chicago, therefore he must be a White Sox fan.
Well, south side. North side would be Wrigley Field.
Oh, that's
south
right.
side.
South side. I got it confused.
No, that's
It's
okay.
the north side of Boston. Boston is
North end. The north end.
The north end.
That's the Italian section.
Yeah,
that's right.
That's Boston, right?
Right. Chicago.
So he's on the south. He's
South side's
the
White
south
Sox.
side, and that's the Italian and White Sox area.
Yes.
And Michelle Obama, I think, right?
I don't know. Was she the south side? I think so.
Would make sense.
What was he? What was Obama? Was he a White Sox or a?
Oh, you know he was one of those where he wore the split hats. I'm willing to bet.
I'm a White Sox fan, but I'm also a Cubs fan.
He's not. There are very
Well,
few
it's
like you, Mayor.
Mayor Adams wore one of those two-sided hats.
And he
I
got
thought
booed.
I had declared them illegal.
Yeah.
All the prior mayors used to wear Met Yankee hats, and I thought they were a bunch of political hypocrites.
Bunch of phonies.
I said, you be what you are. Come on, they'll respect you more. I even told my political I may have told both. I told Roger Ailes that. Roger said the Met fans are going to kick you in the ass. I said, no, they won't. They'll respect me.
To be fair to
They
President,
booed for me every time I ever went to Shea Stadium. There would be loud booing, almost as bad as the Atlanta Braves, except once. One time they didn't boo for me. One time they gave me a standing ovation. I bet you know when it is. When I went there for the first game right after September 11. And very beautifully, they had the courage to wear the hats of the New York City Police Department, my police department, the fire department, my fire department, and the Port Authority that I felt were my people too. And they did it against the wishes of the commissioner of baseball and Bobby Valentine told him to go to you-know-where and asked me if I'd come to the game. Called me. Said, Mayor, I know you're busy. I know you're a Yankee fan. Will you come to the game? And he told me the predicament he was in. He said they took all my Yankee and they took all the hats you sent me. Port Authority, police, fire. And I said, well, we'll get you more, Bobby. He said, well, that's not the point. They're going to really come down hard on me. I said, you're used to that. They suspend you every other day. So he said, are you going to come to the game? I said, of course I'll come to the game. I said, I can only stay about a half hour or 45 minutes. I have to go to a lot of funerals, wakes, but I'll come to the game. And I said, I think it's beautiful because he started. You have that game. Well, that's Yankee Stadium you're showing. That's when the Yankees came back, also quite significant, because that's when George Steinbrenner introduced the tradition of singing God Bless America in the seventh inning, which was never a tradition in baseball. And he was ordered to stop it at some point. And he did the same thing as Bobby Valentine. He told them, what, are you going to take the Yankees away from me? You suspended me already twice, so suspend me again. And now, in most baseball fields, in the seventh inning, we sing the God Bless America. We always do at Yankee Stadium. So here's what happened today. I think we should take you through what happened this morning. But before we do that, maybe we should take a short break, and you can reflect on what an unbelievably exceptional day this is. 5 or 10 years from now, God willing, and the man lives a decent life, he'll be making decisions of unbelievable significance that'll lead us closer to peace or disharmony.
Right.
Given the kind of man he is, I'm sure he will intend to lead us toward peace and unity, and hopefully he does. This is in my set of beliefs and that of about 1.3 billion other people. The man I'm looking at is the representative of Jesus Christ on earth through St. Peter. The one name that they cannot select is Peter, who is buried right below the altar where he is going to be formally invested as the pontiff of the Roman Catholic Church. We'll be right back. Here we are, pretty much at the beginning of the process here at this pristine, I call it a laboratory. It's not like a factory, it's like a hospital. This is the beginning of the process for roasting. Deep grain, very good quality. Most people don't use this quality. We deal with small farmers because they like to know who we're dealing with. They give us the highest quality, all organic, non-GMO. You should know all Arabica beans, no Robusto, all Arabica. They're going to go into the roaster, and it'll get roasted for about 20 minutes or so. Oh my goodness, look at these. My goodness. You're going to want to specially order these. This is what goes into Rudy's coffee.
Hello, everyone. I'm excited to announce the next generation of energy drinks, Rev 7. It has no sugar and no caffeine. Instead, Rev 7 uses Go BHB. Go BHB is one of the body's primary ketones, and it provides the most efficient and clean fuel that your body needs. It also helps you stay energized all day with no crashes. Not only that, it produces 3 times more brain energy than sugar, which helps boost your memory, focus, and mental sharpness. It also helps reduce stress and helps balance your mood. Rev 7 does all that while being the best tasting energy drink ever. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save 20% today. I'm so sure you're going to love Rev 7. For a limited time, you get our introductory 3-pack absolutely free. I drink Rev 7 every day and I absolutely love it, and so will you. If you want to feel and look your best, you need to check out Pure Health Research. They have 45 premium health supplements that are designed to help you with everyday health goals. Whether it's boosting your energy or trimming belly fat, supporting healthy blood sugar, pumping your testosterone up, or even reducing swelling in your legs, Pure Health Research Supplement Store has you covered. Each formula is crafted with natural, non-GMO ingredients, backed by clinical research and manufactured right here in the USA. And here's the best part. Pure Health Research is offering you an exclusive 35% discount. Just go to purehealthresearch.com and use promo code Lindell at checkout. With their 365-day money-back guarantee, there's nothing to lose. So head over to purehealthresearch.com now, explore their 45 amazing supplements, and save 35% before this deal ends with promo code Lindell. Have you ever wondered what happened to the legendary Chuck Norris? Well, I recently saw a video he made and I was shocked. That guy's amazing and he's staying active well into his 80s. What's even more shocking is he's stronger, can work out longer, and even has plenty of energy left over for his grandkids. He did this by just making one change. He says he still feels like he's in his 50s. His wife even started doing this one thing too, and she's never felt better. She says she feels 10 years younger, her body looks leaner, and she has energy all day. Chuck made a very special video that explains everything. Make sure you watch it by going to chuckdefense.com/Lindell. It will change the way you think about your health. Once again, that's chuckdefense.com/Lindell. You won't believe how simple it is.
Come back.
This is Rudy Giuliani. We're back with you, and let's go a bit through today. So yesterday, as we covered yesterday, we'll just remind you, yesterday was the beginning of the process, right? The Cardinals went to Mass in the morning. They then, after a period of time, they all processed into the Vatican and went up to the major, beautiful room outside of the Sistine Chapel, and they went over to the Pauline Chapel. I believe that, I'm sorry, that's where they had Mass. And then after that, they came out and they went into the Sistine Chapel, where they were, where they moved into the inner, I guess we would call the inner sanctum of the Sistine Chapel, where they were going to vote. At that point, everyone was excluded. And we do have, I think, the scene, which again is quite dramatic, where the Archbishop, who is basically the major domo, who actually will eventually leave, when the Archbishop locks the doors of the Sistine Chapel, which didn't get reopened until today. Those are the main doors to the Sistine Chapel. From the inside, they're bolted. And there will be no contact by those cardinals with the outside world. Any contact will be done between the 3 or 4 designated bishops or other clergy. So yesterday, after that, there was a bit of a delay until the first vote was taken. What happened after that is there was both a prayer and a sermon that was given. One by a cardinal who was over the age of 80, who eventually had to leave, and one by a bishop. And one was a prayer and the other was spiritual guidance. Remember what they're attempting to do. And again, you may believe this or not, but this is what they believe and what I do. They were seeking the guidance of God, of the Holy Spirit, for their choice. Their choice wasn't theirs. The choice, they hope, if it's done faithfully, is executing the will of God. And that's what they were lectured about, how to do that, or what meditation to recommendations of meditations to do that. And then immediately they voted. And they voted on a little card. And on the bottom of the card, they wrote the name of their candidate. So they took a vote yesterday, and it resulted in not selecting a pope, which of course would be quite unusual if they did. They would have had to have almost automatically figured out 82 or 83 of them would automatically have come to the same decision, a 2/3 vote. It's not even a majority. But at least it's a sort of table setter for who's first, who's second, who's third, who's fourth, who's fifth, which we don't know. But what we do know is everyone that was named in the media that I showed you or everyone else showed you, none of them were selected. Whether they were actually the front runners or they weren't, but none of them. Cardinal Prevost was not on that list. The only list he was on was the list of Monsignor Alan J. Plaka, who was on this show last week.
That's right.
And Ted remembered it and went back and found it on Alan's list that he announced on this show. It's the only place I didn't pay attention to the name.
Right.
When I heard the name Roberto, I heard Roberto. I couldn't make out the second pre what? And I thought when he said Roberto, I didn't know whether he had named a South American or an Italian cardinal. So he was speaking when the cardinal announced he was speaking in Latin. So of course Robert in Latin is Roberto. It was hard to figure out who is this guy, Roberto who? And you might notice it took a while for the television stations they had to go look, who is this guy? I don't remember him selecting on any list that we ever saw, except Alan's.
Right, that's the only place we saw it.
And
we were kind of.
So today, when they came back, they were on a schedule of 2 votes in the morning, 2 votes in the afternoon, and apparently they can do more than that. So it will have to be determined accurately because there are 2 different reports. This was either the 4th or the 5th vote. It seemed like it was the 3rd vote because it seemed like it was the first one after lunch. But apparently they took more votes. Maybe they knew they were close and they decided, let's take another vote. Because it's recommended to be done that way. But I mean, they could sit there all night and vote if they wanted to. And on the 4th or 5th vote, he was selected. We don't know how many votes he got, but he had to have gotten 83 votes. At that point, the senior cardinal walks up to him and asks him in Latin, immediately asks him, walks right up to him, looks at him, and says, do you accept as vicar of Peter or a successor of Peter? And he says one word, or not. Accepto. I accept. Or nothing. Apparently in the history of the church, at least 3 men have refused the papacy. We wouldn't know because it's private. So we know that based on leaks in violation of papal and religious law. At least 3 occasions, someone refused it, and you're allowed to do it. You have to accept the mission that's offered to you. And it is considered, the expression accepto is considered that it's done in the same spirit that Mary accepted the virgin birth and said because she was asked first, would she be willing to carry the Son of God? And she accepted. And there's a lot of burdens that go along with accepto. Man's life will never be the same again. It'll never be his. It'll belong to God, and it'll belong to a church of 1.4 billion people all over the world. When that's over, all of the bishops or cardinals come up and pay homage to him. They literally kiss his ring or kiss his hand, and they essentially submit themselves to him as their leader. He is now no longer a cardinal. He's the successor of St. Peter. And each one of them does it individually. That's why it takes an hour. When that's over, they all pray, and they take him into a back room, which is a special room that I was in 5 weeks ago. And I showed you a picture of that last night where they have and I'll try to find it again, where they have the robes for the new pope. And they have 3 sets of robes: short, medium, tall. Looking at Roberto Prevost, I'd say it was medium, right?
That's a good question.
When I was looking at the candidates we had last night,
Maybe
I
tall.
thought the Secretary of State, Cardinal Paladin, would have been medium, and I thought my favorite name,
Pizzaballa.
Cardinal Pizzaballa.
That was my pick.
See, I wanted him chosen because I wanted to say his name all the time.
Right.
Cardinal Pizzaballa.
Right.
He would have gotten the long one, and I think Cardinal Tagle, who was from the Philippines, would have gotten the short one. He either got the long one or the medium one,
Right.
one or the other.
Right.
What's good is that we get to keep saying Pizzabola now because he doesn't change his name.
He
If he were Pope?
He will continue to be the Patriarch of Jerusalem
That's right.
unless the Pope decides there's some other mission for him. And he also, at least for the next 6 or 7 years, will be considered the leading candidate if, God forbid, this Pope
That's a
would have
good point.
died.
Hey,
over
he's
time.
got my vote.
That's a good
Yeah,
point. With
yeah.
his age, he's younger.
That doesn't mean he's going to get it. You know, what proved to be true once again
Yeah.
is the old saying: you go in as the Pope, you come out as a cardinal.
That's right. 100%.
If they pick you for Pope, you come out as a cardinal. If you're not picked, you get selected.
Right. Unless you're Monsignor Placa.
Unless you're Monsignor Placa, and nobody I think heard
I
that.
haven't even told him yet. I don't think he knows.
You don't think he knows that he's the only one in the world that made the right choice?
I mean, look, he had an extensive list, right? Like, I mean, there's always some, so, but I was impressed with how he had information on each one of them. And I'm trying to think back of what he said. We'll see if we actually talked about it on the show, because we actually didn't get through his entire list. He had such an extensive list, but he definitely had at the time, Cardinal Prevost, now Pope Leo
Also, when
the 14th on his list.
when he is named when he is asked whether he accepts, and he says accepto in Latin, not Italian. When he says that, he then is asked in Latin, what name do you select? And he has to immediately be prepared with that name. And he selected the name Leo, which would make him Pope Leo XIV. The last Leo was one of the 10 most famous popes. And the first Leo maybe was the most famous pope. The first Leo was in the 5th century, and the first Leo kept Attila from capturing Rome, and is both a saint and a pope and a hero of Italians because he saved Italy from Attila. The second Leo is Leo XIII, who wrote probably one of the seminal encyclicals in Catholic history, Rerum Novarum. And it is about social justice. And it basically rejects capitalism and communism and says there should be a middle ground and it rejects a large central government. I had to read it several times in Catholic school. Rerum Novarum is probably 4 or 5 of the most famous encyclicals written by a pope. And that's Pope Leo XIII. Suspicion is that that's why he selected the name Leo. Or some people believe he wanted to send both signals, that he would be a fierce defender of the faith, like Leo I, who stood up to Attila the Hun, and he wants social justice. But very important, Leo XIII set the church on the mission of being the single biggest opponent of communism in the world. long before anybody else opposed communism. This is before the communists took over anything. He warned people of the unbelievable danger of Marxism and communism. And this is at the time of shortly thereafter Our Lady of Fatima, who appeared in Fatima and did the same. And some of that warning seemed to be missing during Francis's papacy, particularly the agreements with China to allow China to have a role in the selection of a bishop, which seemed to me terribly inconsistent with the role of an independent church. So you go back to Leo and you read that encyclical. I know the left-wing press will paint the encyclical as a condemnation of capitalism. Really wasn't. It was a condemnation of capitalism as greed, but it was an out-and-out condemnation of atheistic communism and socialism, and was read as such, and put the church on a century-long mission to oppose determined opposition to communism in the old mass, which has become controversial. It ends with asking God to deliver us from communism. So I don't know how much of that figured into Cardinal Prevost's decision to use the name Leo, but it is true that they are lectured very, very seriously on selecting a name that has meaning, and that conveys in just that name what the priorities of their papacy are going to be. And all of them are told to have a name ready, because any one of those cardinals or the other one sitting outside could be the next pope, and they have to be ready with a name. Let's see, what else should we cover about the Pope? What else would people want to know about?
Well, of course, the new Pope, Robert Prevost, born in Chicago, went to school. I don't know if they call it school at Villanova.
Yes, of course they go to school.
Well, theological.
Yeah,
but it's a Catholic school, right? Like,
but it's the same. I mean, he studied. He got his college degree at Villanova, and then he went on for 4 years of theological training as an Augustinian.
Right,
and then he was ordained as a priest.
That's right.
And he also was educated in Rome during that period of time.
That's right. The Chicago-born missionary spent his career ministering in Peru and took over the Vatican's powerful office of bishops, and of course was named the first pope born in the United States in the 2,000-year history of the Catholic Church. Of course, the United States being around for 249 of those years. In his first words as Pope Francis' successor, as you mentioned, this was from St. Peter's Basilica. He said the words, "Peace be with you," and emphasized a message of peace dialogue and missionary evangelization. So his parents, Mayor, as we discussed, his mother of Spanish descent, and his father of French and Italian descent.
Now, when they say that descent, were they Americans born in America of Spanish and then Italian and French descent, or were they born?
Right.
We don't know that.
We don't know that. Well, it's obviously out there. We're reading through it here. We'll get an answer on that. Pope Francis, of course, brought Prevost to the Vatican just 2 years ago.
Yeah, it's very. As the cardinals go, he's a pretty young.
Right. I mean, that's the office.
The other candidates were like in their early or mid 70s.
He headed
69.
up. That's right, and he headed up the office that vets bishop nominations.
Yeah, dicastery
from around the world, and of course, that's one of the most important, considered one of the most important jobs.
Yes.
Gave him a leg up, is what some are saying in the conclave.
Well, of course it did, because it made him very familiar in Rome, and all of the cardinals would have dealt with him, because a cardinal has a say or a word with regard to any bishop that is named within his jurisdiction.
Right.
So let's say Cardinal Dolan.
Right.
If you name a bishop for Westchester,
Right.
Cardinal Dolan will be consulted.
Right.
In fact, he may often be asked to submit recommendations.
Right.
But you can pick priests from all over the world and put them in dioceses. Like when Cardinal O'Connor was made the Archbishop of New York, he had been the Bishop of Scranton, Pennsylvania,
Right.
and and an admiral in the Navy, the chief cleric in the United States Navy.
Right.
But he was moved to New York because Pope John II thought he would be perfect for New York, and my goodness, he was.
That's right. So as we continue here, we are looking to get information on Pope Leo XIV's parents.
Well, that's a picture of him as a young priest, it looks like, and he's with Pope John II there in that picture.
That's right.
And
Both of his parents were being told from New Orleans.
He might not even have been a priest yet because the young man in back of him looks like a deacon. Those are the vestments of a deacon that he's wearing. The person in back of him, and you are ordained a deacon before you're ordained a priest.
That's right. The Historic New Orleans Collection organization has tracked the Pope's maternal grandparents to the 7th Ward of New Orleans.
Oh, sure.
So
Wait, the 7th Ward of New Orleans? You said Chicago.
his maternal grandparents.
That's where Italians used to go.
New Orleans?
Oh, New Orleans. That's where the biggest, the single largest lynching took place.
We're still,
Italian Americans are the second most lynched group in American history after blacks.
Yeah. Sacco and Vanzetti. Let's remember that.
Yeah, but they weren't lynched; they were executed.
Oh, well. I mean, whatever.
And the lynchings largely took place, as you might imagine, in the South, because they a lot of the Southerners in those days, who were racist, thought they were black because they looked dark.
So in other news too, it is debated, and there is information on this, whether or not he is a Cubs fan. So the Wrigley Field displayed a message that said he's a Cubs fan, but it's highly debated because he grew up in a household in which one of his parents was a big Sox fan, and the other one loved the Cardinals. I mean, maybe because of the Catholic connection, but it seems at this point,
maybe the other parent could see in the future. So
I was going to say, as a kid, we didn't.
It seems at this point, though, that it's still up for debate, and it is not settled.
Well, he left in 85.
Maybe just doesn't like base. 85.
He left in 85. That's a long time ago, and I wonder if he isn't much more of a soccer fan than he is a baseball fan, since he spent all his time in Peru.
Ooh, let's hope he comes to the World Cup.
So maybe we'll get Andrew to get him good tickets to the World Cup, huh?
Yeah.
Peru. Who's going to root for Peru? So who's he going to support? Peru or the United States in the World Cup? We'll see if both teams are even.
Let's see. I think we got a soundbite about that kind of settles this.
This is the new Pope's brother discussing.
Oh, they found him already?
That's what we're being told. Let's play the clip.
The thing about the Cubs and White Sox.
Yeah, he was never ever a Cubs fan, so I don't know where that came from. He was always.
He was never a Cubs fan. Turn it up.
Our mother was a Cubs fan. I don't know, maybe that.
Just listen closer. Tell the mayor.
His mother was a Cubs fan. They're saying.
He was not a Cubs fan. The Chicago Cubs.
He says,
are
I don't know
already
where that
stepping in it.
I can't hear him.
What does he say?
That's right. But where it came from, I don't know, because he would have been the only one.
He doesn't know where that rumor came from, and I think it's from Wrigley Field.
Have anything more substantive to say about the Pope and who he roots for in baseball?
Well, here's a graphic that someone came up with, and he said, if he's a Cubs fan, explain this. I'm assuming this is AI generated.
That's not real. Yeah. Come on.
That's obviously AI generated.
Okay.
Full disclosure.
Okay. I didn't know if you were.
I know that crazy mascot.
Well, we also heard, may not be true, so we don't want to spread it too far, because he also has criticized J.D. Vance and President Trump that he was a registered Republican. But I find that kind of crazy because it seems like he left too early to register.
Turning Point pulled his records, actually. They've got a Freedom of Information Act, and he was registered Republican and voted in numerous elections.
We're trying to track that down and
I can pull that up. Yeah,
confirm that. He apparently was a registered Republican.
Well, that would have been Reagan time, 85.
The problem being, we're now, well, all right, look, the new Pope, there's a lot here.
But we should, in fairness, list some of the tweets that were found.
Right. So I don't know if we have those tweets. I think we might have
He
them.
has been a critic of
J.D. Vance. Do we
J.D.
have
Vance,
that?
which is a little insensitive. The poor guy's just a new Catholic. Let's go easy on him.
Right.
I mean, J.D. Vance may say, "Why did I join this church?" All they do is criticize.
Right. So we'll obviously continue this coverage going into hour number 2, Mayor. We are quickly approaching the end of the Rudy Giuliani show.
That's right. Head over to X.
So how do we have folks stay on?
We're going to have to also, I mean, very significant today, and it can't be ignored, is the trade agreement with the UK, which now, like my friend Alan, who's been my friend for over 50 years, I made a bold prediction here.
Yeah, we got to get that one too.
I predicted that UK about 2 weeks ago that UK would be the first agreement.
That's right, Mayor.
And I did it based on the fact that they're our oldest friend, and we have the biggest history with them, and therefore it's going to be the easiest to negotiate, and that maybe Israel would be easier, but wouldn't be taken. It would be taken as a given. And the UK, particularly with the new kind of socialist government, an agreement with them would have a lot more persuasive effect. It also kind of puts the EU in a corner, who are going to be difficult to deal with, because it underlines the additional freedom that the UK gets because of Brexit. So that is quite a significant deal, much more so than you might think. So let's tonight maybe we should just pray to God that this will be a successful papacy, because it'll help the whole world. There's no religious leader that reaches out to every corner of the globe except this one, and what he says and does affects people, Catholic or not, and he can be enormously helpful, as Pope John II was in ending communism. So let's hope we have a similar kind of Pope here. So go to X. We'll be back tomorrow night. We'll be on at 8 on X. God bless America.